As you can see, I have already sewn the front bodice piece to front skirt pieces. Now I'm going to pin the placket on center front with right sides together, matching notches. I have sewn my placket and pressed the seam allowances on both sides. Now I'm folding my placket lengthwise with right sides together. And I will sew at the bottom of the placket through all thicknesses. I have stitched my seam and trimmed the bottom seam allowance as close as possible to the seam, especially at the corner. Now I can flip it inside out. Once I have flipped my placket inside out, I will pin it closed. I'm pinning on the wrong side to make sure I see what I'm doing. But then I take it on the right side and I put my pins on the right side all over again, because I always sew on the right side to control the final result. On a shirt placket like this, you really need a neat finish on both sides because you want to be able to wear your collar open, so wrong side will show. And I could do my buttonholes right now, or wait until the dress is finished. Actually, it depends if your fabric risks stretching a lot out of shape. If it's a cotton poplin, for example, it won't stretch, but if it's a crepe, it may stretch a lot. After that, I can sew the other placket on the other side of the dress too. Then I'm taking the back bodice and back skirt. I have already sewn and serged together my skirt pieces at center back seam, and I have sewn gathering threads on the waist parts between notches. If you need more details about gathering fabric, there is a video about that on my website, frenchpoetry.com. Now take your time to make sure gathers are even everywhere. The result is worth the extra care. And you can see it will take me some time. I have stitched, serged, and pressed my waist seam. Now I can sew the side seams and shoulder seams. Now let's talk about colors. I will first show you how to make a shirt collar, then the stand-up collar, which is easier. So I'm taking the two collar pieces. You can see one has interfacing on it and the other doesn't. I'm pinning all around the collar with right sides together, except the neck side. See, all around, except this neck side, which I will leave open. And the seam starts right at the edge. I have sewn my collar. Now I will trim the corners. Like this, very close to the stitching at the tip. This will ensure fabric doesn't bunch up right here in the corners inside. Then I trim the seam allowance to a few millimeters. I can now turn my collar inside out. As you can see, the corners are neat when they are trimmed. And now I'm going to press this flat. I have pressed my collar. Now pay attention. As you can see, I have here the uninterfaced piece on top, an interfaced piece on bottom. I'm taking the collar stand piece with interfacing and I'm placing it on top of my collar with right sides together. Then comes the uninterfaced collar stand piece. It will go on the other side after. So I will sandwich my collar in between collar stand pieces. Now I'm matching notches. I don't know if you see them here. And I'm going to pin all pieces together through all four thicknesses. And now I will place the other piece on the other side, so the piece with no interfacing on it. And I will pin again. I didn't place both pieces at the same time because I just wanted to make sure of what I was doing. Now I can stitch. And here the seam starts at 1.5 centimeter. That's 0.6 inch from the edge, leaving the neck seam allowance free. Now, if you want to do the stand-up collar, it's exactly the same, without the collar pieces. You just take the two collar stand pieces with right sides together and sew, starting at 1.5 centimeter from the edge, so leaving the neck seam allowance free. And here I trimmed already the seam allowance. Then for both collars, you need to trim that seam allowance and sew the collar to the dress. In the booklet I show you one technique with hand stitching. Now I'm going to show you the more classic way to do with a sewing machine. So you need to start by pressing the seam allowance on the interfaced collar stand piece towards the inside, like this. Then you can turn the collar inside out and press it flat. See how it looks after pressing. So I have trimmed the corner of seam allowance inside. I will do the same for the remaining seam allowance corner, like this. And then I can pin the right side of the uninterfaced piece to the dress neckline on the inside, the wrong side of the dress. So that's the uninterfaced piece with no interfacing on it to the wrong side of the dress. Now I have stitched my seam. I am trimming the seam allowance. Now I can fold my collar over this seam. See how it looks from the right side, the outside of the dress. I can now pin my collar close to the seam line and then stitch close to the edge. This is how it looks once finished. See how it looks from the outside when stitched close to the seam. So I am now done with the options of this dress. You can find all other instructions in my previous video tutorial for Pleiades 2. And now the last step is sewing the buttonholes and buttons on the placket. But to do this, I first need to let my dress hang for one night at least. Let me show you why. So here I used quite a loose viscose crepe, and the dress really changed shape after hanging one night. See how the diagonal seams here are not as diagonal as they should be. They're almost looking straight. And the whole front of the dress is falling a bit. So the front is much longer than the back. And so I will need to cut my hemline to even it out and redo the placket bottom seam. So this is why you should wait a bit before sewing the hem and buttons when working on a loose fabric, such as a crepe.